Hello and welcome to S&P Global Ratings Fixed Income in 15, a 15-minute chat with a market voice and an S&P executive. My name is Joe Cass. I head up market outreach here in the UK. Today I'm joined by Sir Danny Alexander, Vice President and Corporate Secretary at the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Alongside Danny is Susan Gray, Global Head of Sustainable Finance and Innovation at S&P Global Ratings. Thank you very much for joining me today, Danny and Susan.
Thanks for having us.
Before we start, just a very quick reminder that the views of the external guest on the show today are their views alone, and they do not represent the view of S&P Global Ratings. Danny, let's kick off with some questions for you. Danny, it would be good to hear a bit more about the AIIB. What are the goals of the organisation, and what is your role and responsibilities within it?
Well, firstly, thank you for giving me the chance to join this podcast, and with Susan too. It's great to be with you. AIIB is a multilateral development bank. So similar to the World Bank or the Asian Development Bank, we were set up by our members. We now have 103 members, countries around the world who have pooled their resources in order to achieve a common objective, which is to invest in infrastructure projects that help to support the sustainable development of Asia. And so our purpose is to use our finance, use our status as an international institution to help to generate infrastructure that helps to tackle climate change, to enhance connectivity, to support digital technology, also to mobilize private sector finance for what we call infrastructure for tomorrow, the kind of infrastructure that our members are going to need, especially low and middle income countries are going to need to thrive and prosper in the coming decades. As Vice President and Corporate Secretary, I'm responsible for our relations with our member countries, managing the governance, ensuring that we take decisions in the right way, and that as a multilateral institution, we constantly meet the highest standards of international governance. I'm actually shortly to move from this position to become Vice President for Policy and Strategy, responsible for implementing the strategies in those areas that I mentioned, and ensuring that our projects meet the high standards that we promise.
Great. And Danny, how is the AIIB looking to promote sustainable infrastructure in Asia? And what role do you think ESG-driven investment decisions will have on the future of finance?
Well, sustainable investment and investment in sustainable infrastructure is absolutely crucial to AIIB, and ESG has a very important role that I will come to. But firstly, let me say that for the bank as a whole, green is one of the core values. We call ourselves lean, clean, and green. Our bank was founded just over 5 years ago, just came into existence just after the Paris Agreement was signed, shortly after the Sustainable Development Goals have been agreed. And so, those are key bits of context and almost instructions from our members, if you like, for how we should operate. We've set out the goal that by 2025, at least half of our projects should be focused on climate change, either climate change mitigation or climate change adaptation. And we want every single one of our projects to be sustainable in a broader sense, meeting basic tests of environmental, social, financial, and economic sustainability, so that every project meets that test. And we see also a role for AIIB in helping to develop in Asia capital markets that focus on ESG, that focus on green issues. Those things are perhaps more developed in Europe or North America than they are here in Asia. And so to that end, we've put together a number of projects which are designed to help build those markets in Asia. One is an ESG portfolio, which we're working with Aberdeen on, and that is is investing in companies that have high ESG ratings, trying to help create a market for those products. We have a climate bond portfolio, which is looking to rate issuers rather than just rate the proceeds of the bond, rate the issuer as a whole in terms of its approach to climate change, again, to try and create a stronger market for those things in Asia. And I think the global movement towards ESG is a key issue that investors are looking at. It's absolutely crucial to driving higher standards in these areas, not only in infrastructure, but across a range of different sectors.
Absolutely. Susan, you spent many years in the infrastructure space. You're now in a leadership position covering ESG. Combining those two worlds, how prepared is the infrastructure sector for an ESG transition, both from a financing or just an overall investment perspective?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, Joe, thanks for having me as well. It's great to be here. I think, first of all, from an overall perspective, the hallmarks of a good infrastructure project are that there has been extensive consultation with all the stakeholders and that it is a very balanced transaction, which is something that is going to be welcomed by the community in which that infrastructure piece of infrastructure is built. And so in many ways, ESG and infrastructure are kind of fundamentally linked in terms of attributes of a strong project. In terms of the financing, however, I think we are really in a situation where we're going to need probably trillions of dollars if you look at World Bank estimates over the next years in terms of the transition to more sustainable infrastructure, more climate-friendly infrastructure. The whole energy transition is going to be very significant. So we're going to be tapping all sorts of capital, debt, equity, venture capital in order to do that.
Sure. Danny, a nice broad question for you now. What will the role of sustainable finance and ESG be in a post-pandemic global financial market?
I believe absolutely critical, because as the whole world focuses on how to recover from the pandemic, the kind of investments that we make have to be focused on the sectors and the infrastructure, in our case, that is needed to help create the sustainable, inclusive recovery. I think whether you're in a developed or developing country, you want to see. And so that means that climate change related is going to be very, I think, even higher on people's agenda. We're going through one crisis. We have a chance over the next couple of decades to take steps that will help to avert another, hugely important and even more serious crisis if we take the right steps coming up. But also, as Susan rightly said, the characteristics of ESG, environmental and social standards, good governance, the way projects are managed, those are actually the key characteristics of good projects. And so with resources being stretched because of the pandemic recovery, I think a focus on project quality and how to ensure projects that come forward are good quality and ready to be delivered and can be delivered quickly is going to be crucial. And I think ESG has a very important role to play in that space too. So I think that sustainability is going to be one of the watchwords of the recovery, and certainly for AIIB, it's one of the watchwords for the types of projects that we will choose to invest in.
Great, Susan. An increasingly important aspect within the ESG universe is how issuers from infrastructure and beyond are communicating their sustainability metrics, their decarbonisation strategy to the market. So what are you hearing from issuers on effective channels, effective platforms to ensure that their message is going to be heard by investors?
Yes, that is a really important area. And essentially, as you say, investors really want to understand the attributes of what they're investing in. So we have really developed two sorts of products, one at the entity level and one at the framework or transaction level, which provide those insights and that analysis and expertise around the projects. The first is an ESG evaluation, which looks at a company level long-term preparedness for risk and opportunities of the future, and also looks at the performance of the company over the last few years and over the short term. And that involves a discussion with management and the board. The work is done by our credit analysts and our sustainable finance team, and it's a global relative scale. So that provides a holistic view to investors of how well prepared a company is around ESG. And then from a green, social and sustainability perspective, for a transaction level or a framework, we can provide second-party opinions. And with respect to green, we have worked with Trucost to also provide an analysis of the net environmental impact of financing, which, going back to what we were talking about earlier, is also very important, because generally investors want to be able to see that a financing is actually going to improve environmental impact, make a difference in the future.
And if I might just add, I think what you said is very important, because for investors who are looking genuinely to make an impact with their money, they're rightly wary of greenwashing or of projects that maybe look good but haven't been fully checked. So having the independent third-party sources of information is crucial. Having also institutions like the AIIB, which bring that high perspective of high standards involved, also stands as a mark of quality. So I think these things can really help give investors confidence to move into this space.
Yes, this is a market that we're expecting will be about $750 billion this year, social, sustainable and green financings, which is significantly, probably triple the size it was last year. So, we're really seeing this market grow very rapidly, and as it grows, the scrutiny around these transactions is only going to increase from an investor perspective.
Absolutely. Okay, now we're going to move on to some non-market related questions. And Danny, I'll start with you. So Danny, you were in British politics for a decade, including 5 years spent as the Chief Secretary to the Treasury here in the UK, effectively the number 2 to the then Chancellor George Osborne. Did you enjoy your experiences in the Treasury, and what were the main challenges, the main achievements during this time?
So when I was in the government, it was a very challenging time in British politics. I was part of the coalition government. I was from the Liberal Democrats, George Osborne from the Conservatives, that came into office in 2010 with the remit to try to help the UK recover from the impact of the financial crisis in 2008. Of course, then we thought this was the most severe crisis we would see in our lifetimes. Little did we know what was coming down the track in 2020 with COVID-19. And in that time, despite the political differences, we managed to take an awful lot of important decisions to help the UK balance the books, get our recovery going, and also invest in things that we considered were important, particularly early years education, transport. We were able to deliver tax reductions for low-income earners, as well as take action to try and strengthen the fairness of the tax system at the upper end. And so, I think there was a lot that we achieved in that period to get the UK on the right track. And certainly by 2015, the economy was growing well and was forecast to continue to grow well. Obviously, many things have changed since then, not least of which is that the Liberal Democrats were no longer part of the government. So then it became a Conservative-only government, and they pursued a different agenda thereafter. But look, there's no greater honour or privilege than being able to serve your country in high office. And it is very challenging and also very enjoyable and very interesting. So, I've learned from my time in AIIB here that there are many other ways that you can make a positive impact in the world. But as a government minister, you really have a chance to make a positive difference for millions of people.
Sure. Susan, you're no stranger to the world of politics either. In the early 90s, you spent 4 years working as a policy advisor in the Australian government. So what was your experience like, and do you have any memories that stick out from that time?
Thanks, Joe. Well, it was an incredibly interesting time, actually, because it was a time when the Australian economy was going through enormous structural change. We were opening up the economy by reducing tariffs, focusing on increasing engagement with Asia, increasing the competitiveness of the services sector, and also value-added manufacturing. And so I suppose my big takeaway from that time is just the critical importance of policy and how much policy change, when it's well done, can actually achieve in terms of redirecting and supporting economic growth.
And Danny, sticking to politics, who do you keep in touch with from your political career?
Well, the interesting thing about a political career is you make many friends on all sides in politics, not only in your own party, but in other parties and beyond. Of course, I keep in touch with the people I work most closely with Nick Clegg, with George Osborne, with many other MPs or former MPs from different parties. But also, I represented the constituency of Inverness, Nairn, Badenoch and Strathspey in the Scottish Highlands, and I have many friends there who I kept in touch with, both in politics and beyond. That's my family home area. It's where I come from. So I keep in touch with a lot of people. And of course, many people work for me, officials and advisors. So it's been, of course, sad for all of us over the last year or so that we haven't been able to travel and see people face to face. But, keeping in touch virtually has been a very good substitute.
Sure. And Susan, you are now in a leadership role at S&P Global Ratings within ESG and sustainability. So have you taken any personal steps to increase your own sustainability footprint? And if so, what have these involved?
Well, firstly, I've become quite obsessive about packaging and plastic and recycling and trying to use as little plastic as I possibly can. But secondly, really in terms of my own lifestyle, putting in solar panels on my house, and also moving to a hybrid vehicle are two things that I'm actually planning to do this year.
Excellent.
Very good.
Danny, you've lived in China for 5 years now. So how have you settled into this life in Beijing, and what kind of hobbies and interests do you have out there?
So it's living in Beijing is, of course, very different to living in the UK, and it takes a while to get used to the different culture, language, which I'm struggling to learn, to be able to make the most of it here. But actually, Beijing is a very livable city. I think much more livable than sometimes its reputation internationally would suggest. I enjoy living here. And one of the lovely things about Beijing is that, of course, you have this very big city, but you have wonderful countryside, within an hour or two's driving. So the weekends, I love to get out and, walk in the mountains or in the Great Wall. I'm a keen ornithologist. There's actually a lot of biodiversity here. So, and then I have two daughters, so they also keep me very occupied at the weekends with different activities. So, but I think, enjoying the natural environment here and having the opportunity to travel to different places in China and see that for myself too, that's fascinating, and I'm very lucky to have the chance to do it.
Fantastic. Danny, the last question goes to you. So on Fixed Income in 15, I usually interview leaders or influential individuals from the world of finance or economics. So who would you recommend I ask to be a guest on a future episode of the show?
I would recommend that you interview Lord Stern, Nicholas Stern, who is very influential academic, author of the Stern Review on climate change, and an advisor to the UK of preparations for the COP26 climate summit towards the end of this year. With climate change being such a crucial issue in economics, in politics, and in world affairs, and perhaps one of the few areas where the countries of the world will be able to get together and make progress, I think for your audience, it's crucial to understand those issues. And I don't think anyone could talk about them with more authority or information than Nick. So I would encourage you to invite him on before the COP26 meeting.
Excellent. Sounds like a great recommendation. Well, my thanks to you, Danny, and you, Susan, for your time today. It's been great to hear your views. And for everyone watching, see you next time on Fixed Income in 15.